At the Huggins Center, the hallways of the center were welcoming, clean, and featured student artwork. At Bullard High School, the classroom was old but clean and covered with motivational posters and educational theory resources. The Huggins Center was in a low-income neighborhood. The neighborhood was home to mild gang violence, and Bullard High School was in a safe neighborhood. One detail that stood out to me at the Huggins Center was a woman teaching a little kid about bugs with plastic bugs. And at Bullard, I taught a student how to figure out the time elapse between two different given times. At the Huggins Center, students walked around freely and exhibited different learning styles. And all the teachers there were women, and they were constantly moving around the class and interacting with students. The students at Bullard were well, but they were not as engaged as they should be, and the teacher seemed to treat the class like a remedial class more than a special education class. Important quotes from Huggins were "Vamos a limpiar," which means let's clean, and from Bullard it was "Don't do that work in your head, use a calculator." One thing that I did not really expect due to preconceived notions was that I did not expect as much culture in the Huggins Center as I witnessed. I also expected a lot more active, simple, and less intellectual instruction than what happened at the Huggins Center. And at Bullard, based off of my preconceptions as a tutor for special needs kids, I did not expect the teacher to talk so bluntly to the students. So the case with my preconception about the culture in the class, in the Huggins class, it brings to mind the Yasso article about cultural capital. Yasso discussed how colorblind classrooms can actually suppress culture and racial identity. And the case with my misconception about how simple or not simple the class was going to be, and the whole teacher and the bugs thing, it reminded me of the Herbert's instructional model and the BSC5 reading. So with the bugs story, the teacher prepared the student by asking if she liked bugs and sitting down with her. The teacher presented by asking the student what some of the bugs were and generalized by explaining bugs she did not know. Then they applied their knowledge to see which bugs would fly and pretending that they would fly in a new context of pretend play. And then with the teacher's blunt quote of use a calculator, you won't be able to do it in your head, to that one student, even though it rubbed me the wrong way, I think it was just a use of zone of proximal development. He was trying to help the kid without giving too much help. And the teacher didn't tell me it was doing that. I just observed that, and same with everything else. Expectations for student at the Huggins Center were they measured their achievement by engagement with the content, and that was probably because it was harder to clearly measure the progress of a preschooler. At Bullard, they measured achievement more by effort and grades, and he placed great value on student memorization of milestone math goals. I think at the Huggins Center, the system benefited students with neurotypical functioning. The lack of structure and the noise in that room would have been debilitating to some young students with autism. At Bullard, it was good for students with intrinsic motivation. The students that didn't have that were just sort of allowed to fail without any individual encouragement. At the Huggins Center, the learning environment of the school was extremely student-centered. The student work was featured around the class to allow students to take pride and ownership in the work. At Bullard, the learning environment of the school was student-oriented, while the instruction was not necessarily so. Huggins Center seemed to address the needs of each and every student in a fair manner. Also, students were given access to many different activities to adjust their work and play to whatever learning style suited them best. At Bullard, all students were given easy access to instructors. However, the technology did not seem entirely equitable because a few students did not understand how to work with it. For both of these questions, at the Huggins Center, yes. At Bullard, no. The most equitable part of Huggins was the use of multiple intelligences as supported by our textbook. Advocacy at Bullard meant the use of IEP programs, which in my history means getting accommodations, but they used it to intervene on behalf of a failing student. What surprised me at Huggins was the freedom of students, but I discovered that they do well in a Montessori-esque approach. What surprised me most at Bullard was the attitude of the teacher. He seemed to approach the students more as a remedial math class than students with special needs. Made me question how much need is there for special needs teachers in Fresno Unified. At Huggins, I learned the importance of not having a colorblind classroom, and at Bullard, having worked with special needs students myself, I went into the class knowing that each student requires a different level of support, and this was reinforced there.